Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are going over my top 5 old but gold premium ships. These are ships that are from, well, more than a few years ago, but despite that, despite all the increase in gimmicks and hybrid and super ships and, downright ridiculous ships that we've been getting here recently, these ships still have stood the test of time and are definitely worth picking up, in my opinion, in today's World of Warships, despite, again, some of them being quite literally 10 years old. So let's go ahead and get on into it. If you do find yourself enjoying this video, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and all of that jazz. Helps out greatly so on the YouTube side of things. But now let's get started with number 5, which is the Tier 8 Premium German battleship, the Tirpitz. The Tirpitz, man, when this ship came out, she came out just before I started playing the game in 2017, but at the time I was watching World of Warships content, in particular Jingles. So I think there was a replay on his channel where like the entire, or like the vast majority of both teams are made up of Tirpitzes, which was a beautiful sight, right? So she's been around for a minute, and I know there is a lot to be said about the state of the older German battleships in game today, but Tirpitz still definitely has a place in game. While it's true she may not be the best ship for random battles in today's World of Warships, she is still one of the best battleships for, Tier 8 ranked, brawls, of course for asymmetrics, any of those closer quarters modes that come in from time to time. The Tirpitz has got me through more than a few seasons of ranked. She's typically one of my go-to choices for Tier 8 ranked, alongside with like the Massachusetts at Tier 8. I mean, she is, well, a more brawlery Bismarck, if you get what I'm saying. By that, I mean, while the Bismarck is, in today's World of Warships, well, it could be one or two things. I should say. She could go for a main battery gun building into just the main battery guns, or the tankiness of the Bismarck, which is what I would generally recommend for random battles. But you can of course also build into the secondary guns with the Bismarck, which makes her a pretty darn good brawler. But, of course, with how brawling goes nowadays, you kind of have to be a full tilt brawler in order to really, make stuff happen. And the Tirpitz is that, because she gives up the hydroacoustic search that you can find on the Bismarck for a set of torpedo tubes mounted midships, which means that for close quarters combat, you got that ace up your sleeve for those drive-bys. Or if someone is, trying to run you down and you're counting them, you can toss the torpedoes. And while yes, they only have a 6-kilometer range, you can kind of push them out to 8 or even 9 kilometers if someone is trying to run you down hard enough. Because if they are, going full tilt ahead and you toss those torpedoes back, they tend to cross that 2-kilometer, 3-kilometer gap between your torpedo range and their ship. So the Tirpitz is better suited for brawling because of those torpedoes. While yes, it doesn't have the hydro, if you've been playing the game long enough, you can kind of guess where and when torpedoes are coming from. Again, if you've been playing the game long enough, and kind of make up for that. But of course, for ranked, I mean, man, Tirpitz is great for that. Ranked is a lot more compacted, smaller teams. You got a really tanky ship in the Tirpitz. The Tirpitz and the Bismarck and the German old-school battleships are really properly tanky with their armor scheme from close range. Good luck citadeling one of these guys from within, 12, 13, 14 kilometers, let alone from their secondary gun range, right? So when you do have those modes pop up, Tirpitz is great for that with their secondary guns, with their armor, with the rapid reload that she has on her main battery guns, which, believe it or not, like the Bismarck and the Tirpitz, they have a pretty nice reload time on those 8 15-inch guns at Tier 8. Now, the accuracy may not be there, but the rate of fire most definitely is. And again, when you're fighting from close in, secondary range in, doesn't really matter too much. So while the Tirpitz, yes, is far from the ideal Tier 8 premium battleship in today's World of Warships, she still shines in, ranked brawls, so forth and so on, which is why she finds herself on this list. Alright, going on down to number 2, we have a ship that's a little bit younger than the Tirpitz, but one that is definitely up there in age at this point. That is the Tier 9 Premium Japanese Heavy Cruiser, the Azuma, released in 2019. I remember when the Azuma and the Yoshino came out in 2019. It's really weird talking about the Azuma being on an old ships list when it's like, man, didn't that just come out like last year? No, Sealord, that was 6 years ago at this point, which is wild. But the Azuma is probably what most players are looking for when it comes to a premium ship, and that is a great credit printer. The Azuma, if you don't know what the Azuma is, it is a large Japanese cruiser with 310mm guns with Japanese HE, which gives you great alpha damage per shell, gives you a nice fire chance coupled with a good reload time, and the guns are fairly accurate, while her sister, the Yoshino, might be a little bit more, well, not might, she is a little bit more accurate than the Azuma. The Azuma's guns are definitely more than accurate, and the ballistics are definitely more than comfortable enough to, sit back and just spam HE from longer range. Which means you can very comfortably sit, toward the rear of the pack with the Azuma, sling HE at the enemy ships, start fires, and just start collecting that sweet, sweet damage. So you get decent at doing this, and the Azuma turns into a wonderful little credit printer, because not only do you have the capability to do excellent, consistent, high damage numbers, but the Azuma is a full-on Tier 9 premium ship, meaning that you get the Tier 9 premium economy, which is the best economy in game outside of something like the old Missouri or the Rome of the Kobayashi camo. It's the best economy you can get in today's World of Warships, is what I should be saying. So you couple those two factors together, and you will be printing plenty of credits with the Azuma. You toss on, a credit booster or two on there, a gray or a green or a blue one, especially a blue one. You will have zero problems just absolutely printing credits in the Azuma. Also, the Japanese HE, since again it's got that high alpha damage, is great for doing damage to destroyers. So if a destroyer does pop up, you are more than capable of absolutely slapping the destroyer for probably, if you get lucky and land most of your shells on target, anywhere from, a third of its HE to half of its HP in a single salvo. The HE really is that good with the Azuma, if again, it all hits on a destroyer, which is of course great for collecting damage from those destroyers and again further printing credits. The shortcomings of the Azuma are that it is notoriously frail. It is absolutely a glass cannon. You can very easily find yourself losing, 20, 30, 40 KHP at the beginning of a match if you goof up, show a little bit too much broadside, and that one battleship player in the back is paying attention and gets a good salvo on you. RNG complies with his wishes, and now you're down to your last, couple of thousand HP. Not uncommon to see a lot of Azumas get absolutely blapped at the start of the match. They are that frail. So very much a backline sniper, HE farmer, but, a ship that many a player is perfectly fine with sitting back and farming their credits in, and it is a very good ship for that. I'd be lying if I told you otherwise. Of course, being a backline sniper means that the Azuma has aged, quite well in today's World of Warships, considering high tier is just kind of that for over half of the match now at this point. So if you're looking for a credit farmer, the Azuma is a perfect pickup for that. She's also a coal ship now. She was originally released as a free XP ship back in the day, but of course we don't have those anymore. She was pulled from the shop for free XP around 12.1, 12.2, and then reintroduced for coal, I believe in the same patch. So this is a ship you can get completely for free. Wonderful little credit printer, very easy ship to play, outside of course just making sure you don't catch a stray battleship salvo to your side. Alright, that brings us down now to our number 3 slot, which is occupied by the Tier 8 Premium American battleship, the Alabama. The Alabama is, she actually was the first ever Tier 8 American premium battleship. I believe she was not the first Tier 8 premium American ship, but she was the first Tier 8 premium American battleship. Introduced all the way back in March of 2017. So she is 8 years old at this point. Yeah. it's crazy thinking that the ship is 8 years old. I remember when this ship came out. But anyway, so the Alabama, what is it? Well, she is a South Dakota class battleship, and the easiest way I can describe the Alabama is by comparing her to the Techline counterpart at Tier 8, which is, of course, North Carolina. Now, the ships are two separate classes, but I do just kind of say, the Alabama is it's North Carolina that doesn't get citadeled with less accurate guns and better AA. That's a TLDR description of the Alabama. Now, of course, she's a South Dakota class. North Carolina's North Carolina class. South Dakota class has a more protected armor scheme than the North Carolina class. What that translates to in game is that the North Carolina has an exposed citadel. The Alabama does not. North Carolina has more accurate and consistent guns. The Alabama has slightly less accurate and slightly less consistent guns. So the Alabama tends to be played at mid-ish range, while the North Carolina is typically played from mid to long range. And you can, get your third turret in the fight a little bit more with the Alabama because you have that better armor scheme over the North Carolina. You don't have to worry about, getting absolutely deleted because you showed 1 pixel too much of your citadel to the enemy team. And you can actually use your third turret, the Alabama. North Carolina, I tell most players that just forget you have a third turret with the North Carolina, and you'll live a lot longer than you will if you try to use that third turret a little bit too much. So the Alabama is definitely more comfortable to play than the North Carolina, but of course, again, her guns are not quite as accurate as North Carolina. You still get those wonderful American 16-inch guns, which are a real thing of beauty to have at Tier 8. They take forever to get where they're going, but when they get there and if RNG is on your side, the North Carolina and the Massachusetts by extension, these shells are really, really good for Tier 8 with their ability to find the citadels of ships that you typically can't citadel. North Carolina too, right? I've citadeled so many battleships that are 9 citadelable outside from, the plunging arcs that you get with the shells at range. These shells, because of the American shell arcs, they tend to plunge a lot harder than you'll find with most other Tier 8 battleship shells. And that means you can go through the deck armor of, a lot of the German battleships. I've citadeled FDG, I don't know how many times with the North Carolina, and only with the North Carolina because of that. Pretty irritating doing that to a Tier 9 battleship. And again, you have those same guns and those same shells here with the Alabama, just in, again, a tougher ship. The Alabama is a fantastic ship. I've had it for quite some time in the game. It is really just a sweet little ship to play. Used to have really good AA back in the day before the CV rework. Nowadays, the AA is, it's better than what you'll find on most other Tier 8 battleships, but of course, most CV players know what they're doing, so they won't fly into the flak. But if you do find a CV player that doesn't really know what they're doing or isn't really good at dodging the flak, you will shred their planes more so than other Tier 8 ships. Not exactly a plane blender like she used to be, sadly, but still, I find at least, better than average AA than your average Tier 8 battleship. Also, of course, too, this is a real still ship, and you can still go see this real still ship in Mobile, Alabama. Here's a shameless plug to my real life video on that. But yeah, I always think that's really cool when you can go play a ship in game, then you can go visit it in real life and get a sense for the scale of the ship and all that. So Alabama, just an all around solid Tier 8 battleship. It can do a little bit of everything. It can do the mid-range American battleship thing. It can get in a little bit closer, be a little bit tankier. If you got really good aim, it can snipe, but again, the guns, while definitely pretty solid for Tier 8, not as accurate as North Carolina's guns. And this is a doubloon ship, if I did not mention that, but well worth every single doubloon you have to cough up in order to get it. Alright, now we go down to our number 2 slot, which is the Tier 6 Premium British battleship, the Warspite, which is also a doubloon ship, but they give it, well, I don't know about any recent giveaways, but they used to give away the Warspite quite a bit back in the day with a lot of the promotions they were running to various YouTubers and such. But either way, it's a Tier 6 ship, which is a very, very cheap premium. The Warspite. This ship is just about to turn 10, ladies and gentlemen. She was released during the beta in June of 2015. So she is now at this point, what, 4 months? Getting close to 3 months away from being 10. That is wild, and she still has it, ladies and gentlemen. So the Warspite is a Queen Elizabeth class battleship that is, I think she was the first or second British battleship. I think she was the first British battleship added into the game, naturally, a premium ship. But what that means, I should say, is that this is a battleship at Tier 6 that has 8 15-inch guns. Having 15-inch guns at Tier 6 means that you are able to overmatch just about everything that you can, well, just not everything, but a whole hell of a lot of ships that you can come across in the Tier 6 matchmaking bracket. You can just punch right through their bow and stern armor because you have 15-inch guns, doesn't really care about that armor threshold. So you can and will bully a lot of ships in your matchmaking bracket. On top of that, these guns are really accurate for a Tier 6 ship, still even in today's World of Warships, which is wild to me that they gave this ship these guns that can overmatch, again, the common armor thresholds of just about every single tier 6 ship it can come across at Tier 6. That is wild. Absolutely wild to me. And she got to keep it, too. Now, the downsides, besides just being a Tier 6 battleship and being slow, is that her armor is pretty chunky. It's not really hard to hit the Warspite at an odd angle and just rip off 10k HP randomly in another Tier 6 battleship. They did give her an improved heal in order to kind of counteract that, which is pretty dang nice. It's not a super heal like what you'll find on the higher tier British battleships, but it is very much an improved heal that will get you through some rough spots playing the Warspite. She's also, this isn't a downside, but she's also really maneuverable, which is quite refreshing on Tier 6 battleships. The American battleships are also surprisingly maneuverable. They can turn on a dime. The Warspite very much can too, which is great when you're dealing with submarines in today's World of Warships, because battleships get that nice 2-kilometer homing deactivation range with the homing torpedoes. And with the maneuverability of the Warspite, it's not all that hard to dodge torpedoes if you know where they're coming from when it comes to the homing torpedoes, so that's also great. Her turrets do take an eternity to get anywhere that they're trying to go. They did buff them, I believe, a little while ago, but you'll still find yourself, especially with the maneuverability of the ship, waiting on your turrets more often than not for them to get into position and fire. In most cases, it's faster just to turn the entire ship than to wait for the turrets to turn. But again, it's just such a good set of guns you got here on the Warspite that it's very much worth the trade-offs here. Also, oddly enough, the secondaries are actually pretty solid on the Warspite. I'm not recommending a full secondary build, but you'd be surprised what you might pick up with these secondary guns once they do get into range. I've gotten more than a few close quarters experts with my Warspite just because it's Warspite, right? But lovely battleship, Tier 6 premium ship. It is a doubloon ship, but again, just like the Alabama, worth every single doubloon. You got to give up for it. And again, it's not that many doubloons in the grand scheme of things when you look at how much some higher tier premiums do cost. And the British nation has a ton of ships now. So great commander trainer here for the Warspite, Alabama 2 as well, and Tirpitz and Azuma, right? These are all great commander trainers as well. Speaking of old ships and 10-year-old ships, we have in our number 1 slot the very first ever Tier 8 premium ship added to the game, and that is the Atago. The ship that replaced the Kitakami after the beta ended. If you guys don't know the lore behind the Kitakami was first released during the open beta. And, we're going to realize, giving players a ship that can crap out 40 torpedoes isn't really a good thing, especially back when friendly fire was still a thing. So the Kitakami was removed at the end of the beta and replaced in players' ports by the Atago. Now, the Kitakami is the only ship in game that's actually been fully removed. Like, when we talk about removed ships, we mean ships like the Missouri and the Massachusetts and the Alaska, ships that have been removed from sale, but if you bought them, you got to keep them on your account. The Kitakami just got absolutely nuked off the face of the game until it returned. Was it last year before last, right? But the Atago was a ship that replaced that ship in player's port, and it's a pretty solid replacement because the Atago is just good. It is so good. It's such a good ship. And it's crazy how this, again, like the Warspite, a 10-year-old ship is still among the best ships in the game. And it is wild thinking that the Atago is literally the first ever Tier 8 premium added to the game. And here we are 10 years later, and it's still putting in the work at higher tier. Considering all the weirdness, all the gimmicks, the F buttons that we've gotten at higher tier, the hybrid ships, the Atago still has it after all this time. It's crazy to me. Why is it so good, you might be asking? Well, you have a set of really accurate 8-inch guns here with the Atago on a hull that's very maneuverable and very stealthy. You put a full summit build in the Atago, you have a, 9.3 kilometer detection range, which is absurd for a heavy cruiser to have. Now, your main battery gun range isn't that great, just like the Japanese heavy cruiser line. The whole, like, playstyle of the Japanese heavy cruisers that you use their good concealment to get in close to the target. You look for targets of opportunity. You use your excellent Japanese HE to blap ships, or use the AP to nuke ships, because believe it or not, the Japanese heavy cruisers actually have pretty solid AP if you have something's broadside. So yeah, they're opportunistic hunters. They're great kiters with their torpedo tubes, with their long-range torpedoes. The Atago 10-kilometer torpedoes has vastly better torpedo angles than the Japanese mainline, although the Zhao did just get buffed to where she now has the turning mechanics to kind of help her out there. But the Atago didn't need that, so the torpedo angles you see here in the background footage, they are way better than the heavy cruiser angles that you'll find on the Japanese heavy cruisers, so she has that going for her still. On top of that, you get hydro, catapult plane as well. So she's a great ship to, harass the enemy team. Great in today's World Warships. Excellent off-flank kiter. So if you have, the enemy team pushing down a particular flank, and you got an Atago over there, that Atago player, if they know what they're doing, they're going to make that enemy team's life a living hell, because you can pop up, hit them with your HE, set a couple of fires, throw some torpedoes in their face, and then just go dark and just kind of, sail around and wait for your next opportunity to pop up and just keep harassing them like that. Great for dealing with destroyers too, because her guns are so accurate and the ballistics are very, very, very nice on the Atago's guns. So when destroyer pops up from, really within like 12 kilometers in, it's not really much of a problem for the Atago to hit that destroyer, start breaking modules, breaking their torpedo tubes, setting them on fire, and again, just making their life a living hell. Are there better ships today for hunting destroyers? Absolutely. But, if it does happen, pretty solid ship for that. And just great ship to burn down the enemy team and annoy the hell out of them, go dark, heal up when you need to, which, again, like a lot of the Japanese cruisers too, the Atago is fairly frail. So you do want to definitely be looking out for those shells coming into you. But with how maneuverable the Atago is, if you put a double rudder build on your Atago, you've got like a sub 3-second rudder shift time, which is absurd for a heavy cruiser, right? So great for dancing around shells, but again, you got to be good at it, or you're going to find yourself losing most of your ship's HP to some stray battleship salvo. So if you know what you're doing with the Atago, she's a wonderful ship, and one that I would highly recommend you pick up if you are interested in heavy cruisers, or have gotten to tier 8, or are interested in the Japanese light cruisers and have that tier 8 experience. Great ship in my opinion. I got this from like a Santa container, like 4 years before I made my first, not 4 years, like 3 years before I made my first Atago video. I got her in a Santa container. She just kind of sat on my port because I didn't know how to play the Japanese heavy cruisers. Then I started messing around with it. I was like, God dang, this is a really good ship, right? And she still very much is in the year of our Lord, 2025. So guys, let me know what you guys think about this list in the comments down below. What older ships would you add into this list? I tried to get ships that were at least 6 years old back, and ships that are still currently available for purchase. So again, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday and wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.